We continue our discussion on taqlid and the evidence that we have in our hadiths that supports the idea of referring to expert scholars when it comes to religious rulings. Previously, so far, we have mentioned the intellectual basis for taqlid. We examined the rational practice of uqala, rational people, in referring to experts. We examined ayat al-nafr, that verse in Surah At-Tawbah, which scholars have cited in substantiating the idea of taqlid. We also examined a number of hadiths and narrations, such as Imam Sadiq alayhi salam commanding his companion Aban ibn Taghlib to sit in the mosque and issue fatwas. We find the Imams, peace be upon them, training their companions to take the principles from the Imams and apply them to particular cases and issue fatwas. So when the Imam commands his companion to issue fatwas, the Imam is also commanding the people to accept those fatwas. Otherwise, what's the point of those fatwas? That in itself is a form of taqlid, where people are referring now to Aban ibn Taghlib to convey to them the teachings of Ahlul Bayt, how he understands Islamic law. That's a form of taqlid. And we also cited the hadith of Imam Reza alayhi salam, in which he says, we give you the general principles. The Imam alayhi salam says, إِنَّمَا عَلَيْنَا أَن نُلْقِي إِلَيْكُمُ الْأُصُولِ. We give you the rulings, the principles. وَعَلَيْكُمْ أَن تُفَرِّعُوا. But you, my companions who are qualified, you scholars, your obligation is to take these general principles, apply them to particular cases. In Arabic, asl of a tree is what? The trunk of the tree. Far' or the furu' of the tree are what? Are like the branches. So we give you the principles, you branch out. When the Imam says you branch out, what does that mean? Does it mean you're just like a tape recorder, you hear what we say and you just go narrate it? Or there's more to it than that? What do you say? How do you know there's more to it than that? From this hadith of the Imam in which he says, we give you the asl, you far'u, branch out. How do we know? That the Imam is not just asking them to be tape recorders, exactly what you hear from me, go and just repeat it. No, there's more to it than that. How do we know? From this particular statement, that the Imam's authorizing more than just conveying the literal words of the Imam, but using also your expertise to issue rulings in particular cases. Where do we derive that from? In this statement, when the Imam says you branch out, how does the word branching out convey that meaning? See, if the Imam simply wanted his companions to memorize word for word what the Imam said, then there is no point in saying, I give you the general laws and you branch out. Because there is no branching out. The Imam would just say, I give you the laws, say them as they are. When the Imam alayhi salam is giving them permission to branch out, the Imam basically is authorizing them to take what they know as general principles and to apply them to new cases, even if they did not hear those cases from the Imam. The Imam is authorizing them to branch out, to apply what they know to particular cases. And that's basically what a marja does. You see how the Imam is authorizing the idea of taqlid here in this particular statement? Because the idea of branching out, how do we understand it? You have a general principle. Now there are cases, new cases. People ask you questions, specific questions, branches. Branches are specific details. The Imam alayhi salam says, now that you get the idea of the system and the principles, you apply the particular details. Use that expertise to apply a particular detail. If you're just a parrot tape recorder, can you branch out from main principles, or that's not something you do? If I hear a lecture, the most detailed lecture of Islamic law, let's say I go to Najaf and I attend the highest levels of classes and I have sharp memory, I'm a parrot. I'm a tape recorder. I hear everything and I come to you and I relate to you all the details of that speech. Am I branching out from any principle? I'm not. I'm just a conveyor. But the Imam here is authorizing them to branch out. That in itself is the concept of taqlid.
After teaching them all the laws of jurisprudence and things of that sort, branch out, right?
Exactly. See, the Imam says, our job, innama alayna. What's our job, the Ahlul Bayt? Not necessarily to give you the specific ruling of every case on earth. We give you the general principles, use those principles to apply them to all cases. So the Imam says, those principles, it's our job to give it to you. You can't invent these principles. But branching out, going into fine details, that's the job of experts. Yes.
Sayyidina, how did Rasulullah
Assalamu alaikum.
How did Rasulullah order his companions to memorize the Quran? Was there a specific verbiage used when he asked them to memorize?
The Prophet did encourage his companions to memorize the Quran. Ihfadhu, for example. In Arabic, if you want to ask someone to memorize the content, man hafidh al-Quran. We have many hadiths, the one who memorizes the Quran. The word ihfadh. But the word tafri', branching out, is not something that was even used at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because people at that time were still not ready to be scholars who can issue fatwas yet. This came later on when Imam Sadiq alayhi salam started educating people about Islamic law in a very structured way. So no, we don't find some wordings during the time of the Prophet. During the time of the Prophet it was simple, just memorize these laws. Yes, brother.
So the first Marja came from Imam Ja'far Sadiq?
Yes, we can argue that the first Marja appeared during the time of Imam Baqer and Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. See, when the Imam tells Aban, sit in the mosque of the Prophet, waftin nas, give fatwas. That means he was a marja. In the presence of the Imam, he was a marja, which the Imam alayhi salam had authorized to issue fatwas. Yes, we can say the early Marja surfaced at the time of Imam Baqer and Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. So now we have these narrations that say the Imams will give us the general principles, then the experts will branch out. Another hadith that Shaykh As-Saduq narrates in his book Al-Faqih, Man la yahdaruhu al-Faqih. This hadith is from Ishaq ibn Ammar, one of the companions of the Imams, peace be upon them. He says, قال لي أبو الحسن الأول عليه السلام. Al-Imam Abu al-Hasan, Al-Imam Al-Kazim عليه السلام. What did he say? إذا شككت فابني على اليقين. If you have any doubts, then resort to certainty. It's the same idea as don't negate certainty with doubt. Whenever you have a doubt, then take your previous certainty. You doubt that you broke your wudu. You don't know. I know for a fact I did wudu, but did I break it or not? Take that previous certainty. As an example, the Imam ﷺ is teaching him this law. قال Ishaq ibn Ammar says, قلت هذا أصل. Is this a general principle that can be applied anywhere? Or this is just a specific ruling in that book of wudu, for example? The Imam ﷺ said, نعم. In this hadith, the Imam said, yes, I am teaching you a general principle. Take this general principle, the application is with you. What does this hadith indicate? That the Imams started to prepare their companions to issue rulings. The Imam would give you the principle. No scholar has the right to invent a principle. The principle must come from Quran or hadith. But the application of it, as we mentioned earlier, the branching out of it, and tufarru'u, this comes from the scholar, from the expert scholars or expert companions. So we see the Imam alayhi salam is authorizing them to issue these fatwas, and therefore the Imams were asking the people to follow these companions. And if anyone has any doubt about this, the Imam in the previous hadith uses the word fatwa. Ya Aban afti nas. It's a sahih hadith in which the Imam alayhi salam says, issue fatwas, O Aban. You're not just a tape recorder conveying what you heard exactly from me. Go and issue fatwas to the people based on the principles that we taught you. And therefore the Imam is commanding the people, if you're not an expert, refer to Aban. So the Imam ﷺ sanctioned the taqlid of Aban ibn Taghlib during his time. He sanctioned the taqlid of these companions.
I mean, just logically speaking, just along the lines of the average Joe out there, you would think that the Imams would anticipate the fact that they will not be here for long. And from that standpoint, it makes sense for them to actually train companions to use these principles.
Because they're obligated to prepare the ummah, their followers, for that absence. Yes. It's only natural that they would train their companions.
So it comes across as natural as far as people out there who would say, for example, even within our school of thought, some folks nowadays who question that, saying that, well, the Imam, the infallible, is not around us. And from that standpoint, we can't really trust what these companions, the so-called scholars, the way they use these principles to bring out rulings. It could be anything from that standpoint. But then that kind of negates the fact that then why would the Imams actually train the companions to become scholars? So
Exactly, that's a very valid point.
Would they want society or people to be lost in their absence altogether? Because that wouldn't sound responsible of the Imams.
Definitely.
In itself.
And if you remember from last week's discussion, when we mentioned the hadith of the Imam alayhi salam authorizing Aban ibn Taghlib to issue a fatwa, we discussed this objection or question. Maybe this was a specific permission for Aban. The Imam knows Aban, he trusts him, he knows he will not deviate, he knows he's fully trustworthy. How can we use that as a general principle and apply it to other scholars? What was the counter argument? What was the response? Anyone who remembers? After the Imam ﷺ says, I want you to sit in the masjid and issue fatwas, how does the Imam conclude that hadith? What did he conclude it with? Exactly. فَإِنِّي أُحِبُّ أَنْ أَرَى فِي شِيعَتِي مِثْلَكَ. I want to see from my Shia people like you. What does this statement in itself indicate? That the Imam is just giving one time special permission for Aban, or it's an ongoing permission for people like Aban, who are scholars and they're pious. They're experts. See, that hadith in itself clarifies how the Imam ﷺ wanted his companions and future scholars to take the initiative and to issue fatwas for people. The Imam says, I want to see more Shia like you. That means it's not a one-time authorization code for Aban, right? Sometimes when you're using a program, you get a one-time authorization code, right? You could say, well, Aban had a special relationship with the Imam knew him very well, he could trust him. Who said he is authorizing others? Well, the end of the hadith gives us the impression that the Imam ﷺ is giving a general authorization. Anyone who's like you, Aban, I want them to go and issue fatwas.
Is this something that's disputed at all out there? Or this is a clear narration that this is sahih?
Well, brother, even God's existence is disputed. There is nothing that's not disputed. In any hadith, in any verse, you might have multiple perspectives. But if you want, I wouldn't say consensus, but the majority of scholarly opinions, they have taken these hadiths as clear indications that the Imams, peace be upon them, wanted their followers to refer to scholars. Yes, there are differences in how you refer to a scholar. We'll examine that briefly, the akhbari and the usuli struggle. We'll examine that briefly. But the idea of referring to a scholar, if you're not a scholar, is something which basically there's consensus on. Let me share with you another hadith. As-Saduq, he narrates this hadith, his chain from Ibrahim al-Karkhi, عن أبي عبد الله الصادق عليه السلام أنه قال حديث تدريه خير من ألف حديث ترويه. The Imam says one hadith that you fully understand and know, you comprehend, is better than 1,000 hadiths that you just memorize and narrate. So understanding one hadith is better than just narrating. You could be a parrot narrating, what's the point? It's understanding that counts. Then the Imam ﷺ says, وَلَا يَكُونُ الرَّجُلُ مِنْكُمْ فَقِيهًا. A person amongst you cannot truly be a scholar, a faqih, حَتَّى يَعْرِفَ مَعَارِضَ كَلَامِنَا, until you know the ins and outs, the direct, the direct understanding of our speech and the indirect implications of our speech. You cannot be a faqih until you know that. Ma'arid al-kalam is when you issue a statement, right? But the statement has multiple dimensions. Like in the political world, you see sometimes how politicians phrase their words. They may say a small statement, but it has so much connotation to it, multiple dimensions. You can take it many different ways. Between the lines, there is so much to read. The Imam alayhi salam says, you cannot be a faqih, a person of understanding, who can practice his religion, unless you're able to read in between the lines. Question. Who's able to read in between the lines? Here, I have 16,000 hadiths in Al-Kafi. Who can understand ma'arid of these hadiths? The ins and outs of these hadiths. In between the lines of these hadiths. Who can know that? Not just the words of the Ahlul Bayt, even the Quran. Who is qualified to know all of that? If you're an expert, a scholar, you're a faqih. You don't need anyone. You and your understanding of fiqh. But these 16,000 narrations, the Imam alayhi salam in this hadith, he's stating, are you a faqih? Do you know the ins and outs of our words? If you do, then fine. You are a scholar. You refer to your own experience and expertise, even with the Holy Quran. Have you examined what we Ahlul Bayt in 30,000 hadiths have commented on the Quran? On the multiple dimensions of the Quran? If you have, then yes, you are a scholar, you are an expert. See, hadiths like this clearly indicate that if I'm not a faqih, I'm not an expert, then what do? How do I practice my religion? What's my other alternative? Refer to an expert. It's very clear from these statements. Any counter arguments to this particular hadith? That you cannot be a faqih who can practice his religion حتى يعرف معاريض كلامنا, until you know the multiple dimensions of our words, the hints in our words. All this is embedded in the word ma'arif. You can read in between the lines. Kalamina. See, our speech, not just the Quran. The Quran, yes, but also our speech, the Ahlul Bayt. So this hadith says, if you don't know, you cannot read in between the lines of all these hadiths, how can you be a faqih?
Okay.
Yes.
So would the Imam be sanctioning then ikhtilaf in understanding the ins and outs of his speech?
That's a very good question. When the Imam issues a statement like that, is he also sanctioning multiple understandings of their speech? Because see, the minute you say you're not a faqih until you know in between the lines, the multiple dimensions of our words, the hints and clues that are embedded in our words, automatically it's assumed there will be multiple interpretations here, multiple understandings, right? So scholars will actually state when the Imam issues a rational statement like that, and rational people are taking these words, and rational people know that you don't have two human beings who think exactly alike, who have the same exact experience. And yes, they might agree on 90% of ma'arid al-kalam, but there might be differences. And if the Imam issued such a statement like that, without clarifying that, okay, you could have multiple opinions, what do you do about that in this hadith? It's a given that the Imam is also sanctioning multiple expert opinions here. The minute you tell people that you're not a true scholar of faqih who can practice their religion until you know the ins and outs of our words. See, the minute you open a door like that, it's a given that there will be multiple interpretations of the text. Yet the Imam alayhi salam issued such a statement. That means he also indirectly did sanction that. Yes, scholars will say that indirectly the Imam did sanction. The implied meaning is that he did sanction it. And we have even clearer hadiths that the Imam sanctioned it. I'll share them right now. So for instance, the Imam alayhi salam, I'll skip a couple of hadith just to cite this hadith and then we'll go back to them. This is a hadith from Dawood ibn al-Husayn, not Hussein, Hussein with the Sad. This is an authentic hadith. According to the scholars of Rijal, in examining the chain, it's a valid chain. عن أبي عبد الله الصادق عليه السلام, from Imam Sadiq عليه السلام, في رجلين اتفقا على عدلين. Two men got into a dispute about a legal matter. So they went to adlain. They went to two companions of the Imams who are adil. What does adil mean? Just, trustworthy. You can trust them. جعلاهما بينهما في حكم وقع بينهما فيه خلاف. Look at the text of this hadith. They resorted to two companions who are just in a legal matter in which these two guys were disputing. See, the hadith mentions khilaf. There's a dispute in a legal matter. So they went to two just companions of the Imam. فَرَضِيَا بِالْعَدْلِ. They both accepted, yes. Let's have them arbitrate. Let's have them issue the legal ruling. فَاخْتَلَفَ الْعَدْلَانِ بَيْنَهُمَا. These two just companions disagreed. Companion 1 issued a ruling. Companion 2 said, no, my understanding of the Islamic legal system is another ruling. So now there's a disagreement. And Imam Sadiq alayhi salam is being asked about this scenario. عن قول أيهما يمضي الحكم. Okay, what do I do? Whose words do I take? They're conflicting. Companion A is saying, let's say this is halal. Companion B is saying it's haram. For instance, what do I do in the end? The Imam alayhi salam, he did not disqualify them and say, no, now that there are differences of opinion, then forget it. Don't go to any of them, I'll give you a better way. Listen to the words of the Imam. He says, يُنظَرُ إِلَىٰ أَفْقَهِهِمَا وَأَعْلَمِهِمَا. Try to figure out, yunzar. See, the Imam says you have to do a little bit of research. Who is more knowledgeable? Is sharper in his fiqh and understanding? Try to figure that out. بِأَحَادِيثِنَا. Not more knowledgeable in physics or mathematics. No, in our hadiths. وَأَوْرَعِهِمَا. Also, who's more pious? It's assumed they're adil, so they're pious. None of them here is lying. But the Imam says, see who's more pious. فَيَنْفُذْ حُكْمُهُ. Whatever he rules, that will be accepted. وَلَا يُلْتَفَتْ إِلَى الْآخَرِ. The Imam says, disregard the other one. Go and take the one who's more knowledgeable. You find that in analyzing a hadith like that, which is an acceptable hadith in terms of its chain and content, the Imam alayhi salam is recognizing there will be expert disputes. There will be disagreements amongst the experts. So the Imam alayhi salam did not disqualify the system. He just gave you a way to stick to one of them. See who's more knowledgeable. Go and take that one who's more knowledgeable. You're confident X is more knowledgeable, follow his ruling. Accept the ruling that he gives you. What do you understand from a hadith like this? Yes.
Did he say knowledgeable or pious?
No, first he said أعلمهما. He said both, but first he mentioned the one who's more knowledgeable and then the one who's more pious. So these, let's say you say to the Imam, I researched, they're both equally knowledgeable. I can't break the tie. The Imam says, okay, see who's more pious. Ask around, see who has a greater level of piety. Follow that ruling. So the Imam here recognizes that there are disagreements amongst his companions. But as long as they're qualified, see, he started by saying, look, they're adil, they're just, they know your fiqh, the fiqh of Ahlul Bayt, they're familiar with your hadiths. But now they have two different opinions. Who do I follow? The Imam says, go after the more knowledgeable one. It's safer to follow the one who's more knowledgeable. Do you see that a hadith like this can be used to verify the concept of taqlid? And if not, give me the counter argument.
I got a question.
Yes.
It's a bit tough to put two people in a position like that. How would you know who's more knowledgeable? Or
The Imam says yunzar. The Imam says do research.
but the pious,
See, nazar in Arabic, when you say see, the Arabic language, the word nazar has a number of meanings. One of its meanings is do critical thinking. Ask, research, all of that falls under see who is more knowledgeable. So the Imam says, see, how to rational. See, scholars say whenever the Imam gives you an instruction and he doesn't explain to you how to implement that instruction, you resort to what? Rational practice. If you tell rational people Research which physician is more knowledgeable. What do rational people do? How do they figure out who's more knowledgeable? Who's a better expert? What do people do?
Ask other doctors.
Ask other doctors, peer review, reviews, whatever it is. The Imams ﷺ is sanctioning it. Because there is a common understanding in fiqh that if the shar', the Quran and hadith, they tell you how to implement something, you have to take it. But if the shar' doesn't say, the shar' says, khamr is haram. Okay, how do I know this glass in front of me is wine? The shar' says that's not my business, that's your business. You figure out if this is wine or not. I'm not going to tell you, go do these steps in the lab to figure out this is wine. That's not my domain. The Quran says, I just give you the ruling. Khamr, anything that's khamr is haram. Okay, is this khamr? Is that khamr? The Shari' here says, you go figure that out. Whatever people call khamr, whatever rational people consider khamr, it's haram. When the Imam here is saying, see, figure out who's more knowledgeable, but he never told them how. He never told them, okay, sit down, let me teach you. Do steps 1, 2, 3, 4. That's how you know they're more knowledgeable. The Imam, does he do that? He doesn't do that. Not from what we see from the hadith. So whenever the Imam does not show you the steps to find out something, what do you resort to? Rational practice. Rational people in any society, how do they figure out who's more knowledgeable? Follow that path. Indirectly, the Imam is giving his permission for us to do that. Because if there was a particular Shari way to figure it out, the Imam had to explain it. The Imam had to explain it, but he didn't. So just assume that you can go by rational practice.
Not to deviate too much, Maulana, but there's a certain Marjayeat that says you don't have to look for the most knowledgeable.
We'll talk about that, whether we have to follow the most knowledgeable or not. We'll examine that. So in just a few minutes, we'll examine that. Or maybe we won't have time tonight, we'll defer that to our next class. We'll have a discussion on why a lot of scholars have said you need to follow the most knowledgeable. What's their basis for saying that?
This is a clear hadith.
Well, scholars have different ways of understanding this hadith. We'll talk about why some of them may not have cited this particular hadith. We'll talk about that. We're just now talking about taqlid. Then we'll get to the details. So this is another hadith. Allow me to share with you some other hadiths here. The Imam alayhi salam, in another hadith attributed to Al-Imam Reza alayhi salam, this hadith is from Al-Fadl ibn Shadhan and Abd al-Aziz ibn al-Muhtadi. Al-Fadl says, وَكَانَ خَيْرَ قُمِّيٍّ رَأَيْتُهُ. He's the best qummi that I've seen. What does he mean by qummi?
Scholar.
What's that?
Someone from Qom.
Yes, an inhabitant of Qom, a citizen of Qom. وَكَانَ وَكِيلَ الرِّضَى عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامِ وَخَاصَّةً. He says, Al-Fadl ibn Shadhan, this top scholar and companion of Al-Imam Reza alayhi salam, he says he was also the wakil, the representative of Al-Imam Reza in Qom, وَخَاصَّةً. Not just any wakil, but a very special companion of Al-Imam Reza alayhi salam. He's narrating this hadith. So he says, Imam al-Reza said to Abd al-Aziz, when he asked, إِنِّي لَا أَلْقَاكَ فِي كُلِّ وَقْتٍ. I cannot meet you whenever I want. So there are rulings that I need to ask about. What do I do? فَمِمَّنْ آخُذُ مَعَالِمَ دِينِي. Who do I take my religious teachings from when I don't have access to you? فقال عليه السلام خذ عن يونس ibn عبد الرحمن. Take your deen from Yunus ibn Abd al-Rahman, who was one of the top companions of the Imams, and he was a scholar and an author as well. What do we understand from this hadith? Without me giving you the seminary understanding, you and this raw hadith, what's your implication? What do you understand? What's your impression of this hadith?
Someone you can go to get answers from or directions.
Well,
So a person that you go to get answers from, to get direction from. What else?
well, essentially for starters, what it's screaming out is that you can do taqlid of this individual and you can follow.
So we can follow this individual
He has
in
sanctioned
everything? In what? In what fields can we follow him?
and rulings, hudud,
didn't say taqlid, though. He just said.
No, the Imam says doesn't say the word taqlid.
He said.
The guy just asked him, I don't have access to you all the time. So where do I get my religious teachings from? He said, from this person. Ma'alim ad-din is the teachings of all religion. It's a general statement. It's not about usul ad-din or furu' ad-din, it's just a general statement.
Religious sciences.
Religious, exactly. Religious teachings, religious sciences. He says, take it from this person. What do you understand from this hadith from Imam Reza when he says, go back to this scholar, because Yunus was a scholar. So when the Imam says, go take your deen from the scholar, what do you understand from a hadith like this? And remember, Al-Fadl ibn Sha'dan is narrating this. Al-Fadl ibn Sha'dan isn't just a reliable companion. He is the top of the top.
He's a qualified person.
What's the impression that you get from a hadith like this?
He's a qualified person to go ask.
Is this taqlid or this is something else? Or it's vague. This hadith is vague, we don't know exactly what the Imam was telling him. What do you say? Or it sounds like taqlid, where if you're not an expert, you don't know all the ma'alim ad-din, then refer to a scholar. What's that? I'm asking you, what's your impression? Could be, so what else could it be? If you look at a hadith like that, one possibility is, okay, the Imam is sanctioning taqlid. What are some other possibilities? Because if we were left with this only reasonable possibility, then we have to say, okay, this is a clear hadith that says, do taqlid. But if you have other possibilities, other realistic, reasonable possibilities, then we can say, yeah, this is not a hadith that we can use for taqlid. It's vague, it could go either way, it has multiple possibilities.
When I'm listening to that, I don't see any other possibility from it.
Let's think, let's brainstorm. What are some other possibilities, like realistic possibilities? What if someone argues this is special permission to Yunus ibn Abdul Rahman? The Imam knows him, he trusts him, yes, anything Yunus gives you the law, take it. But it's not a statement that endorses others.
It's not generalized, it's just saying that person. Well, the other servant says he would like to see.
Yeah, more Shia like him, right.
Yeah,
So if I say this is a special case with Yunus ibn Abdul Rahman, not just any scholar, Yunus, only Yunus you can take your deen from. What if someone says this is a possibility? What do we say?
What is a possibility? That only you can take it from that individual?
Yeah, see, one possibility of this hadith, yeah, this is taqlid. But only from Yunus you can do taqlid. The Imam did not authorize others to be the object of your taqlid. Yunus has a special status. Why? Allah knows. The Imam trained him, he raised him, he educated him. For whatever reason, Yunus is special. But others are not.
So
Is the Azan being recited?
no.
I heard
It's
it.
Quran.
I think I heard it.
It's Quran.
It's still Quran? Okay.
So the way I see the Imam so clearly saying, take everything from this guy, then,
Yeah, so is it specifically this guy?
no, the way I see it, I'm like, okay, the Imam may pass away tomorrow. This guy has essentially the authority, is authorized this individual. This person now does have the authority to authorize the next individual who will.
So Yunus has the authority to authorize someone else?
No.
If he's giving him full authority from that standpoint, that he is the individual.
So let's say I go to Yunus. That's a good point. Let's say I go to Yunus. I tell him, look, I can't see you every day, Yunus. I live in Afghanistan. I live in London. Right? What do? If Yunus told me, refer to this scholar in London, does he have that right?
Yes.
What do you say?
Yes.
Does he have the right?
Based on how you worded the hadith of what the Imam said, I would say that.
In any case, this is a hadith that a number of scholars have cited to say that it also supports the system of taqlid, where the Imam is referring people to companions. Why is Yunus Abdul Rahman special here? He was a scholar, number one. Number two, he was trustworthy. So if anyone's like Yunus ibn Abdul Rahman, who is a scholar, he's qualified, he's an expert, and he's pious. He's not someone who, doesn't fear God and could go after their own personal desires. No, someone whom you can trust. Anybody like Yunus, you can follow him. So when you don't have direct access to the Imam, refer to them. This is another hadith that scholars have cited.
But it didn't say that, it just says refer to Yunus, it said refer to someone like Yunus.
Yeah, but we're rational people trying to figure that out. Well, why Yunus? Well, Yunus, he was a scholar and he was trustworthy. So anybody who's like Yunus, especially if we put next to this hadith, the hadith of Aban ibn Taghlib, in which the Imam says, I would love to see from my Shia like you giving fatwas. When you put all these together, scholars are saying, okay, this is now supporting the actual basis for taqlid. Remember, we're not talking about details yet. Does your marja have to be alive or dead? Does he have to be the most knowledgeable? We're not into those details yet. We're just talking about basis, the basic taqlid.
So you can follow his rulings, whatever he says, in terms of fatwas.
Right.
He's giving the authority.
The Imam is giving him the authority. So that's another hadith that scholars have cited. Another hadith is the famous hadith that you've probably heard. This is a hadith that's mentioned in the book Kamal ad-Din wa Itmam al-Na'ma. And basically during the major occultation, we find Imam al-Mahdi ajjalallahu ta'ala farajah asking his people to follow who? The narrators of his hadith. وَأَمَّا الْحَوَادِثُ الْوَاقِعَةِ, with events that are recurring. New cases that occur. Haditha can be a case, can be an event, anything that occurs. فَارْجِعُوا فِيهَا إِلَى رُوَاتِ حَدِيثِنَا, refer to who? The narrators of our hadith. فَإِنَّهُمْ حُجَّتِي عَلَيْكُمْ, they are my proof on you. وَأَنَا حُجَّةُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِمْ, and I'm the proof of God on them. So the Imam is authorizing ruwat al-hadith to be the marja. Irji'u means go to them, so they are references, because the linguistic meaning of marja is what? Source of reference. Source is called marja in Arabic. Think about this hadith. Does this hadith support taqlid of scholars? First of all, the Imam says refer to who? Narrators of our hadith. Who are narrators of their hadith?
Generally speaking, scholars.
Well, why do you say scholars? Somebody memorized, he has super sharp memory. He memorizes 5,000 hadiths. Imam says, he's my hujjah.
I'm interested in IT, Sayed, that's why
So let's think about this hadith when we meet next time. This is an important hadith to discuss. Does it support taqlid or it has other possibilities? When the Imam is asking the entire ummah, all of his shi'as, to refer to narrators of hadith, what exactly he's asking us to do? So someone has sharp memory, he's memorized 30,000 hadiths. The Imam says, okay, go to him, he's my reference. Yes, maybe you could make that argument. Let's see if that's a valid argument. The Imam says, just go take the hadith from them, and then you decide which hadith is correct, which hadith means what. That's up to you to decide. Just use them as tape recorders. That's all. These tape recorders are my hujjah. These narrators, in that basic sense of narration, are my hujjah. Is that the meaning of the hadith? Or there are clues that it has another meaning? Inshallah, we'll examine that in our next class.